Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time to join us this afternoon. We have a great 30 minutes lined up for you. A reminder before we get started, this will be recorded and made available on community.franchise.org later this evening. As well, if you have questions, our speakers will get into how you can ask questions via video, but you can also use the chat feature here. We'll be monitoring that and the speakers will get to it as they can. So today's topic is maximize every call or text. 3 strategies to a successful customer journey. Today is sponsored by Marchex, and we have 3 great speakers from the company. So to get us started, I'm going to kick it over to Angela No, and she'll get us into the weeds.
Thank you, Caitlin. Hi, everyone. I'm Angela No. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Marchex. So excited to be hosting the webinar today. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we start. As Caitlin mentioned, we want this webinar to be as conversational and consultative in nature as possible. So please feel free to unmute your mics and ask questions throughout, or pop your questions in the chat box. Without further ado, we have our 2 main speakers here today, who are both veterans in the industry, Lee Barth and Susie Boyder. Lee is our Enterprise Sales Director at Marchex, who focuses on our franchise and home services vertical. He brings 15 years experience in ad tech and has deep domain knowledge and experience working with SMBs and global enterprise brands. Susie is our Enterprise Account Executive at Marchex, who also focuses on our franchise and home services. She has built her career in the technology business solution industry, where she spends the bulk of her career at AT&T. Franchising is close to her heart, as Susie's husband was one of the original founders of Precision Door Services. So with that, I'll turn it over to Susie to go over the agenda for today.
Thank you, Angela. So today we're going to cover 3 key strategies around the customer journey mapping and why that is important for you, how to personalize that customer journey. And then, we'll get into the pitfalls and the benefits and the no benefits of web form fills. And with that, I am going to turn this over to Lee, which he will start with the customer journey.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate you taking the time today to talk through this. So talking through the customer journey mapping, everyone's seen this probably. You may have one up in your office right now and reference it regularly. But it's also good to think through creating multiple versions of this, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later. These come in many different forms and nomenclatures and probably have different parts for your organization. But in this one, channels reference the touch points for your customers and how you would connect with them. Key metrics are very much about the measurements and goals that you have. We actually received a note in the registration, a question asking about benchmarks. And what we've seen typically is that we'd recommend that from a benchmark standpoint, they're organizational, they differ between each of your organizations and verticals. But typically what we see and where we touch, which is across all parts of this customer journey, email click-through rates are 2%, email open rates are 20%, SMS read rates are 90% within 3 minutes or 97% within 15 minutes. Hold times should be kept under 2 minutes. Outbound contact rate should be between 15 and 20%. So those are some key metrics that we kind of keep in mind as we're thinking through different parts of this journey. Next down is the responses. And in the response section, typically this is addressing your customer concerns. And then where we have here is the opportunities. This is sort of a blowout. This is where we focus with a lot of our customers, so when thinking through this, we have a customer that we went down this journey map and we're trying to figure out some challenges that they were having. They were getting a lot of bad reviews on Yelp and some of the other services about the hold times. And so we actually recorded the calls. So as a part of our company, we, measure the attribution, where the calls are coming from. We record the calls and understand what's happening on the calls. And so with them, we listened to a bunch of calls and tried to see what was going on. It was pretty revealing. So these were marketing calls for new customers. And what they were doing is we're sending them into their interactive voice response system, the IVR. And they were asking them, if you're a new, enter your customer number. And so that's an immediate friction point for someone who's new, who's not a customer. So that was taking some time. And then they had many levels of their IVR, which they had to key press to get to the place. That was one aspect of it that we learned just listening to the conversation and understanding that flow. And then the hold times, which is another thing that we're monitoring and helping our customers out with, were well over 2 minutes. And so we saw very clearly these frustrations and kind of put together a framework and strategy for how they could best approach this. So it was really helpful to get that view. And that's just one part from consideration to conversion. So these are people coming off of marketing campaigns and they are then landing on the customer's website and making that phone call or text. So when thinking about the customer journey, there's some really important things to keep in mind. So with that customer that I was just referencing, one thing that was very clear is there was no collaboration between their departments or an organization on that customer journey. Marketing and operations, the people who were answering those calls, did not connect. They didn't talk about, hey, these calls that are coming through, we know very specifically that they are new calls, new customers. They should be sent through a different system on that IVR. And so making sure that there is cross-department and organizational collaboration is key. The other part is making sure there's a cohesive strategy for online and offline touch points. This is absolutely key. You want to make sure that those two things talk to each other. You're collecting all sorts of amazing data, and those two influence each other in big ways. Certainly from our standpoint, you know, online is a customer comes through a Google search, they enter those keywords, they land on the customer site, and then they make a phone call because it's one of the numbers that is listed there. That's the visibility that we're providing from that offline standpoint. That customer made that phone call, but now our customer has that visibility and we're connecting the two dots and we're able to see it all the way through to conversion. The other thing you want to do is take a forensic approach to your customers. Really understand them. You should be asking them questions at every step of the customer journey because there's a lot of great information that they can provide. And you should be meeting them wherever they want to communicate with you, whether that's email, social, texting, phone, however your customer wants to do this. You need that feedback to make key decisions on how you're going to adjust many different parts of your customer journey. So we've seen a lot of great work from that. And then lastly, create, different buyer personas and respective maps for each. So, what I'm talking about is we have Gen Z, we have millennials, we have Gen Xers, we have boomers, we have it all. And you even segment further down, female, male, even age groups between that. And you should be creating a map for each one of those because it's likely that they want to interact with you in different ways and have different touch points along that map. So it's super important to not only have your overarching map, but to take individual maps. And Susie's going to talk a little bit more about personalization to each one of those people.
Thank you, Lee. So personally, as Lee was emphasizing, we provide a lot of data, and you may also be able to receive a lot of data from, many of your CRM or a lot of the, tools that you use. You need to use that data to enhance these experiences because personalization is the key to enhance that customer experience. One of the things that's really important is to understand your mobile universe. We did have a customer that had over 140,000, regular customers in their database. And the biggest question that they had is, we don't think texting is for us because, we look at our database and we look at everything that's in there and it's all home number, the mobile phone number field hasn't been completed. And I'm like, okay, so are your agents actually skipping over home number and putting in mobile phone? Are they asking if it's a home number or a mobile phone? So we did a scrub for them, okay? And, we found that 86% of that column that said home number was a mobile phone number. And that, opened up their eyes to a little, some different things. CRMs need to start updating, for opt-ins, we're very good at do not contact, like do not make a phone call, do not send no more mailers. But we have to now go into, do they want to be texted? Can they? And that has to be part of that conversation. You also want to understand the importance of the demographic and geographic of your actual customer, whether that contact is by phone or text. And, what does that mean? And some of this information may or may not apply to your type of business, but, let's get as much information about this customer as we possibly can, and then study that data, and so that we can have an inbound, identification of who our customer really is. And we can then build targeted campaigns. We know that our brand is important. And when we build brand campaigns, they normally tend to work better than non-branded. So just the same way, think about building targeted campaigns, whether they're online, whether they're on TV, or whether they're on radio.
Hey, Susie, we received some questions through the registration link. Can you address how to deal with abandon rates?
Okay, so I'm assuming that abandon rates might be, maybe at the phone, or maybe even at the web form fill. So yes, if it's at the phone, then one of the things that we've helped our customers with immediately is to, if they're experiencing high call volume, or maybe they have a seasonality of high call volume, one of the things that we've done is said, as soon as the customer calls, we ask the question, if you'd like to, continue this conversation via text. And, we can, depending on the industry, we can, massage that. But what we try to do is try to divert that caller to a text, call, or to a text, message. If you think about, you can only speak to one person at a time, but a text agent can actually handle about 8 customers at a time. So that had reduced their call-in bandwidth greatly. And they were able to not, like Lee was saying, on hold for 2 minutes, they give up. So the on-hold time was reduced greatly to about 30 seconds because customers were able to divert that conversation to text. And the same thing is when you're on a website. When you're on a website and you have a form fill, they're expecting an answer right away. So, and I'll go ahead and I think this is a great segue into Lee's next comment. So yeah. I'll go ahead and let him, talk about the web form fills.
So yeah, more recently over the last year or so, this is where we're finding some of our biggest opportunities with our clients, and just sitting down and talking with them and understanding how they're processing their web form fills. I mean, I think many companies do this in different ways. Some are very quick to respond to these. They immediately send an email. Sometimes they send a text and they're advanced like that. Some do an immediate outbound phone call from that conversation. I think where we are nowadays is there's an issue with outbound phone calls, in the sense that it depends on what number is showing to that customer. Oftentimes when I get calls, it's like telemarketer, spam risk, unknown 800 number. And so many times customers are not answering those calls, even though it's immediately right after you've submitted that form fill. And this is an area where there is that greatest opportunity. And so one of the franchise customers, a pest control franchise that we worked with, we identified that they were leaving about $1.5 million on the table from their leads. And what we enabled as a part of that process with them is working through how they were responding to those web forms, looking at their web form in very detailed fashion, capturing only critical information. I mean, really, you should be down to minimal, 3 fields is really the minimal. But number one, I would recommend from here on forward, everyone should collect their mobile phone number and call that out, but also be explicit about what you're going to do with that mobile phone number. I know a lot of people question that and say, well, they wouldn't be willing to share that information. But if they're wanting to get in contact with you, they will share it, as long as you are very clear about setting expectations, what you're going to do with that mobile phone number, and suggest the opt-in language there. And then you'll be very clear when that text message is sent to them. So that's a super important thing to think about now. making sure that those the web form fills are smart as well. So if you are asking for any more information beyond the 3 or 4 fields, then if you need address, some sort of information, have it be smart. So as I'm typing in my address, it should automatically start filling that out for me based on the numbers and the street name that I'm providing. There's other things that you can populate in there based on what I've been doing across the website as well to make it smart. Make sure you optimize it for mobile. Many times I've seen these form fills are, you have to scroll in and scroll down the page, and it's really hard to see it. So make sure it's easy to enter the information in there. So back to this pest control customer, number one, speed to response is key because customers, as we know, are just going to move on. And so what we've done with our text messaging platform is really help to enable a communication with the client. So when they fill out the form, you immediately respond with a text message. You can do a number of different things. You can say thank you for submitting the form fill and ask a follow-up question. So if you had other questions in that form fill that you wanted to capture, but chose to shore it up a little bit, then do that in the text message. It's as if you're having a conversation with that customer. They feel that you're engaging with them at that moment. And so that's really important. The other opportunity, which is what we really help with Pest Control Franchise with, is getting them to know that I will be calling you in the next 5 minutes through a text message. You can just say very simply, hey, just be aware there may be an unknown call number that's coming through, but we're going to contact you. And it helped those engagement rates by 4x. So it's those kind of things that are really important to monitor on the web form fills, because there's a lot of money that's been left on the table with clients that we've worked with on this. And texting is a great way to help shore that up, leveraging bots to be able to communicate, ask more questions, or even doing a small set of questions initially, and then providing a link in your follow-up text to more questions, and then engaging with them there. So there's all sorts of ways that you could do this. And as we know, speed to response on these web forms is absolutely critical. So don't wait, days, hours. It shouldn't be but minutes on those responses.
And think about it. Most people that fill out a web response or even go on a chat, they're not able to talk at the time they're doing that, or they would have picked up the phone, but they really want, they want a response and they want it quickly so that they can make a decision. Thank you, Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, Angela, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Lee and Susie. We hope everyone was able to get a lot from that webinar. If you'd like to continue the conversation, we're offering a $100 Amazon gift card for 25 minutes of your time. Again, it's not about us telling you about what our capabilities are, but it's really, we want to utilize that time to ask you questions about your business and how you're approaching your business. If it's a fit, fantastic.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
We're going to open up the floor now for any additional questions. We're going to leave our contact information so you can contact us via text or email. But are there any other additional questions? Oh, we have one that just came into the chat. What are the most effective things I can do with a small budget? If my budget has been scaled back, what are my options?
I could take that one. I think, it's not new. It's not a new idea, but marketing automation. I know we're all dealing with challenges around hiring people, keeping people employed, and answering calls and texts and being able to connect with customers. So I think from a budgetary standpoint on what you can do to be most efficient, it's really about marketing automation. And I think marketing automation comes in many different forms, whether it's around leads, whether it's around upselling, your social media posts. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can affect the entire customer journey with marketing automation that will help make your operation more efficient and rely less on those resources that are so precious right now.
Great. We have some additional questions that came into the registration link. So Lee or Susie, can you talk a little bit more about follow-up?
Sure, I can take that. So follow-up, it's back to following up, again, with web leads. Follow-ups can be a callback, and follow-ups could be, just anything that, like I said, any engagement that you need to come back to, so, automating your follow-ups allows you to stay on top of that as well. So, if you have follow-ups that you need to do, make sure they're automated. And again, Lee talks about automation. There are many ways to automate things that keep you in check and keep that customer journey moving along with that customer happy. So I think, there are, different ways of, setting automated follow-ups, whether it's by text or, by some, even if it's a follow-up through a platform that says you need to make a phone call right now. Great.
Okay. We have one more question around call conversion. Susie or Lee, if you want to take that as well.
Sure. I'll take it. I'm assuming so conversion, it probably means many different things. So it could mean appointments, it could mean an actual purchase. So I guess it depends on what your version of conversion is. But this is absolutely something that's, what we work with our clients on. So there's many different ways that you're going to approach this. Number one, you need to understand where the calls or texts in this case are coming from. And so we really help you with attribution. We can tell you what channel, what search word terms were used within Google. Then once that attribution piece is in line, now the call happens. They come to your website, they dial your phone number, and they make the call. We, as part of our service, record that conversation. We transcribe it and we apply AI to that conversation to really understand what's happening. So we can look for words and phrases that are related to conversion. So if that's an appointment or a purchase or a customer number or those sort of things, those are very clear words that will be spoken on every converted call that happens. And so measuring that against which sources delivered that call is a very important thing that we do. It's sort of the foundational piece of how we work with our clients and help them ultimately. But yes, a very, very, very critical thing to do if you can measure that kind of stuff in your organization.
Okay, great. I think with that, we'll wrap it up. But thank you, everyone, for joining. And thank you again, IFA, for hosting. I'll turn it over to Caitlin.
Great. Thank you guys so much. Yes, thank you all again for taking time to join us today. To Lee, Angela, and Susie, thank you so much. To Marchex, thank you so much for your support. Again, this will be recorded or was recorded and will be made available on the community site later today, along with a copy of this PowerPoint deck. So check out community.franchise.org and look for the title of this webinar as well. If you cannot find it, you can email us at webinars@franchise.org, and I can always send you a copy as well. All right, Susie, Angela, Lee, thank you all again so much. Marchex, thank you again. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.